In this video, I'm going to take you through and give you a good overview of CSS Hero version 4, the latest version of this visual way of editing the CSS code on pretty much any WordPress website. Now before we start, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by CSS Hero. They reached out to me and asked me would I create a video introducing you to the new features for CSS Hero version 4. If you want to find out more, the link's in the description below, or you can simply pop over to wptuts.co.uk/CSS Hero and go straight over to the website. So let's kick this intro video off with showing you how you actually access CSS Hero once you've installed it and activated it. Jump onto the dashboard, and as you can see, we're onto the dashboard itself, and you can see we've got a nice little welcome message and some information about CSS Hero version 4, all pretty cool. What we need to do is simply come up to the top section. You can see we've got Customize with CSS Hero. Now you can click here and open up the interface if you want to, or you can go through to something like one of your posts or pages. If we jump over to the pages, for example, once we're in there, we'll say we want to edit a particular page. So I'll say I want to edit the store page. You can see we have the option for Customize with CSS Hero. This will then take you directly to that page and allow you to start editing things. So let's click on that to start off with. And once we open up, you can see that now invokes the editor and shows us that particular page already opened up inside CSS Hero version 4. Now the interface is laid out in a very simple, logical fashion and should be familiar to you if you're used to working with the customizer that's part of WordPress. On the left hand side, we have all of the controls. On the right hand side, showing most of the area, is the actual page we're editing. At the top, we've got some options, and at the bottom, we've got the save and publish and the cancel options. So the interface is very simple and clean. What I'm going to do in this first part is just show you how each of these different elements actually work and show you how you can switch between the editing mode, where we can edit the CSS, and the navigation mode, where we can jump to different pages and start editing without having to go back out of this particular editor to open up another page. Now on the left hand side, we have the CSS Hero panel and the inspector. Now currently there's nothing selected on our entire page, so we're seeing nothing in there. So to get that active and start working, we simply need to come over onto the actual preview of the page. And as you can see, as we mouse over, we now get little areas that tells us we're going to select this and the different tags and so on that are associated with it. Now we'll come back to those in a moment. Let's just take a look. Let's activate something on this right hand panel, and you see once we do that, that now opens up the panel on the left hand side, and we can see all of the properties. We can see the code or the CSS tag that we're currently editing, or we can switch over to the inspector mode, and if we want to, we can hand code our own CSS directly into this particular panel. So you can, if you want to, if you're accustomed to working with CSS, you could use this as a nice visual way of editing things, seeing exactly what's going to change, but do it all by hand as opposed to using the actual editor itself. Obviously, if you want to, you can use a combination of both. So you can start off by making some changes, and then you can fine tune and refine that by hand should you need to. Let's just jump back over to the CSS Hero tab and take a look. Let's do something really simple. We've got an item selected. You can see we've got the UL products, list item, product A, image. There's a mouthful. Well, let's go in and do something like just add a background to it or add a border to it. So let's just say we'll come in and add a border. So we'll set a border width of 1, and you can see that immediately applies that to every single item that uses that specific CSS tag, that definition. You can see it automatically updates exactly what we select inside the visual editor. So we've got the border style is solid, the border width of 1 pixel. We set that to 2 pixels. You can see that updates and also updates in real time in the preview area. What you can also see is it's incredibly fast. You simply make a change, it updates straight away. This is one of the areas the CSS Hero 4 have definitely concentrated on, is making things fast. Now we can also make changes directly in this code editor area. If we want to, we can simply come in, change that from 2 to 3 pixels, and it'll update in real time to show us exactly what's going on. So we can very easily start to combine any of these options, any of these ways of working directly inside the editor on the left hand side. So there's the basics of the editor. The inspector we've already taken a look at. You can see there's everything inside there, which we can now go in if we want to. We can also export this as either CSS, so just a plain CSS file. We can export it as a minified CSS file, so we cut out all the spaces and so on, or we can export it as a less file. So there's a lot of options in which way we can export these files. Obviously, if you export it, you can do whatever you want with it. You could use that as the basis for further alterations on a different site, whatever you want to do. Those options are there should you need them. So that's the inspector and the CSS Hero panel on the left hand side. Now across the top, we've also got some additional options. You can see we can go through the media queries. We can take a look at tablets in landscape and portrait or mobiles in landscape and portrait. So we can easily click, take a look at those, and we can fine tune and tweak anything we want based upon the type of device that's being viewed upon. So as you switch between different devices, so for example, your desktop is going to show you full navigation, as you can see at the top. However, if you go to a mobile, you can see that now shows the hamburger menu. So if we want to, we can come in and we can style those elements based upon the device that's being viewed upon using those media queries, which again just makes CSS Hero version 4 an incredibly easy way to work. We've also got the option then at the top to switch between the edit mode or the navigate mode, and as you can see, we've got keyboard shortcuts. We can use Command or Control and H to switch between these different modes. Now in edit mode, you can see we can select things, we can make changes to anything we want because we're editing the CSS. However, if we want to switch to a different page, we can switch over to navigate mode, and you can see that now disables all the options on the left hand side and also disables the ability to select things. We can now come in and we can just jump over to another page. So let's just say, for example, we want to look at the individual product page. We can click, take a look at that. We can then switch back to the edit mode. We're back into the edit option, and we can now start editing anything on this page using the panel on the left hand side. Let's simply selecting what we want in the main window. So it's very easy. We've also got the option to undo and redo, and as you can see, they're using the standard keyboard shortcuts of Command or Control and Z and Command and Control and X. We've also then got the option to take a look at our history. So we can click and we can see everything we've done, the time it was done, the date it was done. And if we want to, we can jump back to any of those edit points so we can see exactly what we've done and jump back out of where we are now. So this is a great way of allowing you to experiment with different things and not have to worry if you make a complete utter mess of things. You can just jump back to a history state and then call it back up from there. However, a history state is all well and good, but it only allows you to jump back to that particular point. What if you wanted to do something like test and design ideas out? You might have to supply different versions to a client for them to approve which they think is the best. Well, this is where checkpoints come in. You can see we can create by saving checkpoints. We can also load checkpoints in. Now, as beyond this video, I don't want to go into too much detail, but what checkpoints allow you to do is basically save your design exactly at that point, and then as you continue editing or change things, you can save it again, and then you can jump back to those different edits, call them back up in a very simple fashion. Just checkpoints, really cool. Then we've got the option for project, and you can see we can come into there and we can edit the media query manager, select a tree, and so on. So if we jump over to the selector tree, for example, you can see what this does is it shows us the entire tree for the particular page we're working on all the various different elements. And as we go over that particular selector, you can see everything is then highlighted that has that selector being used inside the main editing screen. So we can see that preview, we can see what we're selecting. If we want to, we can click on there and then we can start editing. You can see it pulls up on the code editor on the left hand side. We can now go through and start editing and styling things using the CSS Hero panel on the left, or by using the inspector and manually typing those in, or a combination of both. So another really good way of being able to come in and start selecting and editing what you want. Now the final thing I want to show you on this right hand panel is if we come to the project, you can see Media Query Manager. We can click, and if we want to, we can create our own custom media query. So if you want to target a specific resolution on a particular type of device, you can add your own media queries into this, and then you can target those to the CSS. Bit of more of an advanced topic, but if you are looking at this as something you want to use as a CSS editor as opposed to just a visual editor, this gives you a lot of flexibility in making sure you can target all the devices you may need to, either now or in the future. So let's just close out of that and let's close this right hand section down. Now at the bottom you can see we've got this section which just shows us the hierarchy of the particular select that we have selected. So you can see we can easily come through to this and we can select various different things, and as we do, that'll show us in the code editor exactly what we're selecting, at which point if we want to, we can start targeting that CSS and making changes directly inside there. So it's very easy, and there are multiple different ways that you can go about targeting exactly what you want inside the editor, making sure that you get everything you need directly from the preview window. So lots of really cool ways of accessing the right selector. Now before we take a look at the editor in a little more detail, we can also undock or detach the editor. So if we're working on something and we want to see this without the distraction of this on the left hand side, we can easily drag that over and it'll float, and we can just see our page as we'd expect to see it and just move this around as we need to. If we want to redock it, we can just click on the detach editor again, and that will put it back into exactly the right position. We've also got a couple of other things. If we take a look at the editor itself on the left hand side, we can increase the size of these fonts if we find it's a bit small, or we can decrease them if things are a little bit too large. Lots of really cool options on there to make sure that the interface is set up exactly how you want. So that's the basics of the interface itself. How do we start getting in and really taking a look at some of the options that we've got available? Let's come back into the navigate mode. Let's just jump back over to the store page so we can take a look at that. And we'll use this as the basis for our edits. And as you can see, even though we haven't saved anything at this point in time, our editing options are still in this. We've still got that border around the images that we have on screen in front of us. Let's switch it back into edit mode. And now we can come back in and we can make any change we want. So we can come over, we can use these selectors just by clicking on any element that we want. As you can see, we mouse over, we get notification of the element that we're choosing. Also, you'll see some things are in blue, and it also says that it's edited. So just by mousing over, we can see, have we made a change to something on screen? If we have, it'll highlight in blue, tell us it's edited. So we've got that constant reminder of any changes we made. We can see exactly what they are and where they are. And not only that, but this particular little highlighting section that tells us what we're selecting has more options available. If we click on this icon on the right hand side, it'll show us all of the margins and padding and so on that have been applied to this particular element. So we can see exactly what's there, and we can now visually edit that. So if we want to increase any of these, we can increase or decrease. We can do whatever we want on there. And we can adjust those things in real time visually without the need to get in and start editing any kind of code. So let's just make a little change. Let's add a little bit of space at the bottom. Let's just drag that down, making sure that we get everything lined up the way we want. Now you're noticing nothing's actually happening at this point in time. It's because we're visually editing this and it's not going to rearrange everything on screen in front of us. But once we click outside, you can see that now activates those changes. If we take a look on the code editor on the left hand side, it shows us that margin bottom is now being applied. We can visually see that alteration inside our editor itself, and if we want to make any fine-tuned tweaks, we can do that directly inside the left-hand panel. So there's lots of ways of achieving the same thing. So 39 pixels is probably a little too much. Let's just change that to 20. Hit enter, and there we go. So we've now made those changes, and everything is lined up the way we want. Obviously, like I say, we could, if we want to, just use this, and we can update this in any way we want. So let's put that to 20 pixels. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And we are done on that little edit. Now I don't like this particular outline, so I can simply select that if I want to and just come back over to our section on the left hand side, go back out, go back to our borders, and we'll just set that border to be 0. And you can see that now immediately takes that off there. So pretty cool. Now we're not limited to doing just those kinds of things. We can also do things like change the different states. So if you take a look at the top, you can see we've got this image selected at the moment. So let's just make sure that's the item that's selected. We can come to the state, and you can see we've got none and we've got hover. Now none basically means it's in its state as it is at the moment. Nothing's happening to it, it's just being displayed on screen. What we can do then is we come to the hover state. Nothing really changes in the editor, but now we're working in the hover mode. So if we do something like put an outline around this, let's just say we put a 1 pixel outline around there. We can come back out of this, go to none, and when we mouse over, we'll now get that blue outline. So we're now seeing that we get in the hover state, and we're also getting the normal state. Now we come back over to that state switch. You can see at the moment the state, and we can see exactly what's going on there for the non-hover version. And if we come over and change that over to the hover version, you can see that now shows us just the edit. What this will also do is it will inherit anything we set on this particular section. So anything that's in the normal state, unless we change that value, for example, the border style or the border width or the margin at the bottom, unless we change that, it will inherit those settings. So there we go. That's how easy it is to make changes to the hover state and the normal state. We'd also come up where we've got this blue bar at the top. We click on the left-hand side this time. You'll see it'll show us the context. So we can say only this element. We can come in and we see what element it is we're editing. It tells us it's edited. We can add our own selectors in there. So we have a ton of option all inside the interface itself. So again, a really nice way of being able to see what you're doing, but also see what you can change on there. Okay, so that's just some of the things you can do. Let's just select something different this time. Let's just choose this search box, for example, this search button. So let's come back out of this, back to our main editor. And what we can do now is we can take a look at some of the options we have on the left-hand panel. Now, if you are going to do this and use it visually, this is where you're going to spend most of your time. You're going to select something, then you're going to come over and you're going to make alterations to the properties that are associated with that particular CSS class. Now, at the moment, this is used in the secondary button. So anything that uses that CSS class, if we make changes to it, everyone will reflect that change. So ultimately, all those buttons that use that class will change. So if we change the background color, for example, currently it's set to blue, we can choose anything we want from there. And you can see we've got a nice simple color picker. We can just choose any way of changing the values on here. We can even use transparency if we want to. So let's just set this to a nice sort of yellowy green, and we'll make it slightly transparent just for the fun of it. And we'll say, okay. So now that button's been updated. Now you can see we've got a blue border around it. So we can come back out of the background, come down to our borders, and in there we can change our border value and we can set that to whatever we want. So let's just set that to something like this dark gray. If we want, we can adjust that as well to make sure it says exactly what we want and click OK. So now we've made a change to that. And if we want to, we can change the border style to dotted or dashed or no border whatsoever. Whatever we want to do, we can make those changes directly inside here. Now, where we've made those changes to that secondary button, if we scroll down and we take a look at another of the buttons on the page that actually use the same CSS definition, you can see they've also picked up the styling because we've changed that style globally. So it's very easy to make global changes throughout your entire site if you want to using CSS Hero 4. Now, before we wrap this video up, there's a couple more things that I want to show you. As we've seen, if we jump back out of borders, we've got all the normal things you'd expect, things like the borders, typography, backgrounds, and so on. If we scroll down, you can see we've also got snippets and we've got animations. Now, snippets, as their name suggests, is a way of being able to create a style and then save that style as a snippet, and you can then apply it by simply clicking on that particular element and assign that snippet to it. So let's take a look at that. Let's come back up to this button. We'll select that. On the snippets, we'll come to the button section and expand that out, and you can see we have a range of different button snippets in there, different designs. All we need to do is simply click to apply, and you can see that immediately picks up that styling. Now, we're not limited to just applying this. If we want to, we can easily come in and change the colors on there. We can choose to remove this item. We can come down and choose any other predefined item if we want to for the styling. So let's just say we like this option. We can click apply and you can see that immediately applies it. We've also got the option to preview things. So you can see we mouse over, it'll show us a preview where we don't need to click anything. And then when we're happy with the one we want and we choose it, we can simply hit apply. So that's pretty cool. Now, we're not limited to just styling buttons. Let's just come back out of the buttons option. And you can see we've also got things like shadows and dividers, backgrounds, icon sets, and so on. So let's just take, for example, we want to use this particular image, the product image section. We can click on that. We can come over and we can say we want to apply a shadow to it. You can see we've got some subtle shadows, some less subtle shadows, and we can just simply come over, preview this to see what it would look like, or we can come in and just simply apply something. So let's just say apply that. And there we go, we've now got that shadow effect on top of there. And as we mouse over, you can see it changes the image. So if we want to, let's just remove that. We can, if we want, come over to the state, change the state to hover, and then we can come down and we can apply that shadow now. So what that's going to do is nothing's going to happen on the image as it is until we mouse over, and then we get the shadow effect. So you can see now we've added this animated shadow effect just by applying this predefined style, this snippet, directly to the hover state for this particular image. Let's just remove that to reset everything back and come back out of the hover state back to none. And this leads me on to the next section. Once we've covered snippets, we've now got animations, and this allows us to apply animations to various different items on our page. And when it comes to work with animations, you just need to bear in mind that what we're doing at this point is we're dealing with the animation on entry. In other words, when you actually view this, it comes into your viewport, that's when the animation is going to take effect, this on reveal. So as you can see, it says on reveal effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the images. We're going to come over to our on reveal effect, click on there, and we're going to say fade. So once we've done that, you can see it shows us a brief intro of what it's going to look like and fades them in, but it doesn't really give a good example. If we scroll down the page, we see the next line of products. Once they come into the viewport, they now fade in. Now, obviously, we have control over things we can do with that. So we can set any easing we want on there. So we say, let's just say we want this to ease in. And now when we scroll down, we get an ease in effect. So you can see we can very easily fine tune and tweak this on reveal effect very easily inside CSS Hero version 4. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how we save this and what happens when you save it. You can see we've got the option to save and publish, and we'll click on that. That will now save that. It'll create that CSS file for us and load that in as part of our site. Now the nice thing to know with this is that it only applies a CSS file as part of your theme. It loads that in conjunction with everything else. So it's an independent file, so if you make any changes or you delete it completely, none of your actual source files on your theme or anything else to do with your website are going to be affected. It's completely independent. So once you've done that, you can simply come back out and you can quit out of this if you want to. Once you quit out of this, you'll just go back to the page itself. Now the final thing I want to tell you about is, let's just say you've gone through and made a pile of changes and you want to put things back to the way they were. Can you do it? Very easily. So you come to the tools on the top right hand side and you come down and you say reset theme edits. You click on that and say, are you sure you want to update and change all these edits and reset them? We're going to say yes we do. So we click OK, and you can see now everything goes back to exactly as it was before we made any changes at all. Nothing has now been affected. So we can, if we want to, hit save and publish, and we've made a change to that and we've got rid of all those edits. We can start with a completely blank slate. And there we go. That's an overview of CSS Hero version 4. Taking you through how the interface works and how all the different elements work on it to give you a basic idea of what you can do with CSS Hero. If you'd like to check out some more in-depth video tutorials, you can take a look at those right now on screen. Also, if you want to find out more, don't forget to check out the link in the description or head over to wptuts.co.uk/CSS Hero. As always, my name has been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.